The citywide chime was a constant, pulsing agony, a migraine with a soundtrack from hell. It clawed at the inside of Alex's skull, making coherent thought nearly impossible. He stumbled through his apartment, reeling from the waves of sonic pain, but driven by a desperate singular purpose. He had to find the source. He had to understand the first echo. He slumped into his chair, the glow of his monitors the only light in the room. He forced his trembling hands onto the keyboard and mouse, his vision blurring. The audio files from the fire, he had to finish. The answer had to be there. He worked through the pain, his sound engineer's discipline the only thing keeping him anchored. He isolated the final chaotic seconds of audio from the main studio microphone before the feed cut to black. He filtered, amplified, and scrubbed, peeling back layers of static and distortion. And then he found it. It was there, on the tape. 0.8 seconds before the explosive roar that had destroyed the station, there was a sound. It was a massive, overwhelming version of the chime, a sound of such complexity and violence that it distorted the recording itself. It was the original sin, the sound that had cracked him open. Hearing it on the recording, separate from his own perception, was a terrifying validation. He wasn't crazy. It was real. But as he listened again, isolating the frequencies, he found something else, something hidden beneath the chime's overwhelming power. It was faint, filtered through walls and glass, but it was unmistakably there. It was the sound of a specific, customized cell phone ringtone, a bizarre, jaunty 8-bit tune. The ringtone played for 2 seconds, was followed by an audible click, and then, less than a second later, the explosion. The fire hadn't been an accident. It was a bombing, detonated by a phone call. The blood in his veins turned to ice. He knew that ringtone. He had only heard it a few times, but it was unforgettable. It belonged to a man named Marcus Thorne, the station's former manager. Thorne had been fired 6 months before the fire for his increasingly radical and unhinged political views, which he tried to inject into the station's news coverage. He had left under a cloud of threats and vitriol, blaming the station for his public disgrace. Suddenly, everything connected. Thorne had bombed the station, and the massive citywide chime pulsing in his head, it wasn't a natural disaster. It was Thorne. He was finishing what he started. This was a coordinated terrorist attack. A new kind of terror seized Alex. The chime wasn't just a warning system. It was a targeting system. The different sounds, the different directions, they were the locations. He could feel it, a horrible map of death overlaying the city in his mind. A subway station downtown, the public plaza by the courthouse, the main bridge. He had the what, the where, and the who. He had all the pieces, but his only evidence was a sound no one else could hear, and he was the prime suspect in a series of increasingly bizarre incidents. If he went to Detective Miller now, he'd be the one locked away while the city burned. He was out of time. The chime in his head was building to a crescendo, the vibrations becoming so violent he felt like his teeth would shatter. The bombs were about to detonate.